بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن والاه. أيها الإخوة والأخوات، بل أيها الدعاة والداعيات، أحييكم بتحية الإسلام الخالدة، فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كما أعلن لكم، فهذه الدورة المباركة والتي تعقد على مدى 13 سنة هي في السجل السادسة، ولكن في الواقع هي 13. تعقد مرة في السنة وتتناول ضوابط أو سمها الاستراتيجيات وطرق الدعوة. ومن حقكم علينا أن نوجز لكم ما تتوقعونه عن هذه الدورة. فهذه الدورة من مسماها ستتكلم عن طرق ووسائل واستراتيجيات، بل سيضاف إليها أيضا بعض المصطلحات والمفردات، وقد أفردنا محور كامل ينمي ما لديكم من المصطلحات، لا أقول الإسلامية وإنما الدينية. فأنتم ستحتكون بناس من مختلف المشارب، منهم من يدين بالنصرانية، ومنهم من يدين بالهندوكية، ومنهم من يدين بالبوذية، بل ومنهم من الملاحدة. هذه الدورة ستقدم لكم على فترتين، فترة من بعد العصر إلى قبل المغرب ب10 أو 12 دقيقة لكي يتسنى لكم الاستعداد لصلاة المغرب وتناول بعض المرطبات، ثم تبدأ الفترة الثانية من بعد صلاة المغرب إلى أذان العشاء، ولا أقول إلى صلاة العشاء، إلى أذان العشاء. فبعضكم مرتبط بمساجد أو مصليات معينة أو ارتباطات، فيستطيع أو تستطيع أن يدرك موعده. سنتوقف بإعلان أذان العشاء بإذن الله الفترة الثانية. هل من جديد لهذه الدورة لمن شارك معنا العام الماضي؟ نعم، هنالك أشياء جديدة كثيرة. فهنالك وجوه ومواضيع اختلفت عن العام الماضي، ونحن نحاول أن نطور هذه الدورة بناء على ما نستلهمه من الاستمارات التي وزعت وستوزع عليكم وعليكن في نهاية هذه الدورة. فقد أفادتنا كثيرا وساعدتنا في عمل أو تحسين وتقويم وتقييم هذه الدورات. Dear respected brothers and sisters, I start by saying Assalamu alaikum, the greeting of the Muslims. And also, when I address you, I wouldn't say brothers and sisters. In addition to saying brothers and sisters, I will say, oh, you callers to Islam. Because I have the feeling, and I am sure about it, that all those brothers and sisters who registered and enrolled with us in this course, surely they have a very noble and sublime objective, and that is to spread the Islamic cause. And so especially when we, all of us, the lecturer, talk about these topics, we are addressing not an ordinary people, we are addressing the elite of the society, and that is you, brothers and sisters. It is right upon us in the Abha Community Center to tell you what to expect. As I said in Arabic just a few minutes ago, this session or this course is counted to be the 13th course throughout 13 years. It is announced that it is the 6th, yes, but in reality it is the 13th. Also, those who enrolled with us last year or the year before, are they expecting something new? Yes, there is a good news that there will be new faces and new topics. Another thing that I said in Arabic just a few minutes ago, I said even from the title of this course you can expect what is it about. We are talking about approaches and manners of inviting others to Islam. And you notice we are very meticulous in our wording. We don't say inviting non-Muslims or kafir to Islam, no, we say others. Because wisdom is sought and should be sought by Muslims in general and Da'iyah, caller to the path of Allah, propagators of Islam in particular. There will be 2 sessions. The first session will be from after Asr to not the announcement of Maghrib prayer, no, about 10 to 12 minutes before that. So you will be allowed time to make ablution, to prepare yourself for Maghrib prayer, and also to have some snacks. Then the second session will start straight away after finishing Maghrib prayer until the announcement of Isha, in order to enable those who have certain engagement to fulfill their engagement. I don't want to take much of your time. I should proceed with my topic, but I think that I should pave the way by telling you what will be the essence of my presentation to you today. And also we will be honored this after Maghrib tonight to listen to the spiritual journey of Brother Asim from the United States. He will take us in a journey, free journey, you don't have to pay for the ticket. So he will take us about, talk about his journey. It's not any journey, it is a spiritual journey. How did he come to embrace Islam? And in it, the story itself is not just a kind of relation and just amusement. No, I expect that from you being a caller to Islam, that you will deduce a lot of strategies and approaches to Islam from the story of Brother Asim, who will be speaking to us after Maghrib tonight, God willing, inshallah. About this presentation, as you have noticed, we are talking about Muslims in the West, past and present. What has that to do with the course? You should ask this question, and I'm sure maybe it is in your mind that you say, what has this title to do with approaches and manners of calling others to Islam? You have the right to ask this question, so allow me to do this kind of clarification. It is related very much to the topic, to the theme of this course in 2 aspects. One, you will be surprised by the statistics that you will be seeing and reading on the screen about the presence, the dominant presence of Muslims in the West. So you will come to the realization, our aim, of presenting such a topic is to get you to the stage that the religion that you are serving, that is Islam, is a universal religion. You are not serving a religion related to certain geographical location, or certain race, or certain language. No, far from that. You are serving, you are propagating a universal religion. Witness to this, the statistic, the surprising statistics that you will be hearing about the presence of Islam in the West. Notice that I'm not saying the presence of Islam in Europe, because I'll be talking about Canada and the United States. So that's why I have chosen the term in the West rather than in Europe. The second relevance is, towards the end of my presentation, I will get you to watch a CD, a show, a presentation that will not last more than 5 to 7 minutes. Zakaria, we have a problem with the sound. So this presentation is given by a Muslim? No. An average Christian? No. This report, which I benefited from a lot, is given by evangelists. So we are starting with the terminologies now, the religious terminologies. From the first lecture, when I say evangelist, you know very well, or maybe you don't, that anyone who is propagating Christianity, you can call him a missionary worker, evangelist, propagator of Christianity, and so on. But add to your religious dictionary this word, evangelist. So this man who prepared this report, he is an evangelist. Witness to this, that towards the end of his report, you will hear him in his own voice say, if this is the situation of Muslims in the West as such, go back to your gospel. Go back to the Bible. It is a time for action. This is what he's saying. But we, as a Muslim, we say, go back to the Holy Quran and spread the Holy Quran, spread the message. So this is the second relevance of my presentation to the theme of this course. Now I think I feel at ease to start with my presentation after paving the way of this presentation and what to expect. One final thing that I would like to say before I proceed with these slides. Some of you will say, are there exaggeration in these amazing statistics that we read about the presence, the number, the calculation of Muslims in the West? The answer is, I don't know. There could be, maybe there is an exaggeration in this report done by an evangelist, and maybe not. I leave it to you. You are intellects, you are educated person and people, so I leave it to you to deduce your conclusion. Some of you might say, well, maybe there are exaggeration. Muslims can't be as much as we will be reading or seeing in this slide. Others, they will say, no, this is possible because Islam is a religion of logic. It doesn't contradict with the intellect. So why not? Maybe these statistics that you will read and see on this slide are reality. Anyhow, this is maybe we'll talk about it in the question and answer session. I leave it to you, but allow me now to proceed with my presentation. Historical background. Since, as you have noticed, I'll be talking about the status, this is the position, the status of Muslims in the West, past and present and future. When we talk about the past, let's go back to history. After the Second World War, there were, by the way, some people, they say as many as 40, that is 40 millions were massacred or were killed during the Second World War. So this left a vacuum in Europe and in the West in general. There was a great need for manpower after the First World War. So to fill this gap for the great need of manpower, a lot of immigration came from the Muslims, in particular from the Indian continent to Britain. As you know, many people from the Indian continent immigrated to Britain in particular. Many people from North Africa, like Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, they immigrated to France. And a lot of Turks immigrated to Germany. And to relieve the atmosphere of formality in this hall, allow me just to give you a quick joke. Every now and then, you will notice that I give jokes in order to make you feel at ease and to make you feel that we are here to exchange views. It's not a question of a lecturer and audience, a speaker and a listener, no. You will notice maybe when we come to this question and the session, you will be doing the speaking, I'll be doing the listening. So don't be surprised. The joke says, it is spread among Germans, they say that when they talk about the number, the notable number, it is for them noticeable, or notable. For us it is notable number of Muslim Turks in Germany. So it is a common joke in Germany. You find the Germans saying that the last German citizen will be buried by a Turk. Did you get the joke? They're saying that if the number of Turks continue as such, there will be a time that there will be no more Germans. And the last German will be buried by a Muslim from Turkey. They say it's a joke, but it has a connotation. It has certain messages, you know, when you come to the statistic that I will be talking about. You notice that I am quick in my presentation in order to allow much time for discussion, correction, and comments. Still, we are talking about history. In the 70s, the type of those immigrants is different. Before they were ordinary laborers, workmen, but with the 70s, we started to have students from the Muslim world going to Europe. educated, also professionals. We started to notice physicians, engineers, intellects, various field of study immigrating to the West. So this is a difference, kind of shift in the 70s. Then we come to the 80s with the presence of such educated people, whether postgraduate students who are preparing for their MA or MS or PhD and so on, and with professional people from the Muslim world going to the West. They felt the need for identity. And this identity is exemplified in a place of worship, mosques, not only mosques, Islamic centers. And the mosque is included. One part of it is the mosque. Also, they wanted schools, Islamic schools for their children, because they did not feel safe with some of the syllabus and curriculums taught in the West. So they needed schools, Islamic schools for their children, and also they need to preserve their identity exemplified in Islamic centers or in mosques. What is the nature of those Muslims in the West? They are in groups. Some are gathered in the West based upon their affiliation with the different movements. Others, they gather in a certain Islamic center in the West based upon their race, nationality, language, and so on. Which is an Islamic, but there should be just one unity, and that is unity of faith. But this is reality. It happens. You go to London now, you find a mosque for certain people from certain country. While our hope, really, and our expectation that there will be an Islamic center for all the Muslims, regardless of their language, of their race, of their faith, their affiliation. Then, when you talk about the individual, the Muslims in the West, in themselves, you find them, you can classify them into three categories. Some of them, and alhamdulillah, they are devout Muslims. They did not lose their identity. They are observing Islam, and they are practicing Islam, and the big but, they are not doing something for the society. They are not spreading Islam. They are, what we say in Arabic, salihun, not muslihun. Yes, one sister said it. So this is, it shouldn't be the case. A Muslim shouldn't be passive. It is good, but it's not enough that to be good in yourself. Yes, but how about your duty towards the society, especially the society in the West? They need this great bliss that Allah has given you, and that is Islam, faith. So they are devout. I talk them or I classify them as devout. They are good, but in themselves. They are not doing anything for Islam. They prayed and so on, but what have they done to Islam? The second type, they're active. And those people whom really we should concentrate on, they are devout and they are active. Active in the sense that they know that as soon as the Prophet, peace be upon him, in his farewell ceremony, he gave the message and he said, "Oh Allah, witness, I have delivered the message." Have I delivered the message? They said, yes. From that moment until the day of judgment, the call to Islam is a must upon all of you brothers and all of you sisters. So those speeches of people, they fit within this category. They are devout, but they are active also. They are serving Islam, they are giving lectures, they are spreading, they are talking about Islam. And this is what we should expect from the ambassadors to Islam. Unfortunately, we have the third type, and are uncommitted, or I don't know, we call it bare-minted, uncommitted Muslims, and I met a lot of them when I was there. They do exist, and we pray to Allah to get them to come back to Islam, to practice Islam. They unfortunately misrepresent Islam in the West, but they do exist. They do. You will never notice that they are Muslims, except when their name. When you know their name, oh, you're a Muslim, but his appearance, his behavior, his act, his commitment is nothing. Even sometimes, some of them are more devious and corrupt than non-Muslims. They are there. Now, developed into councils. Those Muslims in the West, they started to establish their councils, societies, Islamic societies, Islamic associations, Islamic councils, and this means a lot, you see. Not only that, when they started to establish themselves in a very constitutional way, those Western governments started to recognize them, and this is a big achievement. Why I say this? I say it because when the EU, European Union, recognized those councils, those Islamic societies, associations, there are a lot of benefits that they gave from the government. I'll give you an example. You'll be surprised when I tell you that the salary or the wage, whatever you call it, for Muslim teachers who teach Islam in the Western schools are paid by the government. Not only that, when I was in England, we were surprised to have a delegation, to receive a delegation in our Islamic Center from those who are concerned with education in the British government, and they came to ask us what books and syllabus and curriculum do we suggest for them in order to teach Islam from, which is a great thing, you know. Instead of teaching Islam from these books written by Orientalists, which are, far from Islam, they come to you in the Islamic Center, they come to your council, your association, your society, and they say, please nominate reliable books so we can teach Islam among other religions that we teach in our schools. Finally, recognized as a second religion by Belgium, Austria, and Spain. What does that mean? It means that a certain Western government not only gave the help to those teachers who teach Islam, more than that, they recognized Islam to be the second religion in the government, in the state. Does that imply anything? Yes, it implies a lot of things. One, that since it is recognized as the second religion in the state, this means they are completely free to establish their own school, to establish their Islamic center, to build mosque, and so on. Another thing, certain, even in their universities, they will be allowed to establish what is called Muslim Student Associations, Muslim Student Societies. And these societies are financed by the university itself. In other words, by the government. They give them a place, location, certain finance help. They support their activity, their conferences, and their book displays and exhibitions, and so on. So up to now, alhamdulillah, 3 countries in the West recognize Islam to be the second religion: Spain, Belgium, and Austria. Now, 9/11. This is a big event, and talking about it is, it takes a lot, who's behind it, what is happening. This is another issue. It needs a whole, maybe session, not only session, maybe a whole series of lectures. But let's talk about it from this point of view, that with 9/11, regardless of who was after it, why it happened, who did it, and so on, regardless of this, let me talk about it, that it was a turning point, you see. Some of us talk about the good side of it, some talk about the bad side of it, but when I talk here, I just tell you something, to know the reality of the Jews. I had the chance to go with the Muslim World League after 9/11 to the United States in company with his Eminence, Dr. Abdulah Abu Eshy. And to my surprise, what I heard before I went there was reality. I thought it is exaggeration, but it was reality. They told us that all the bookstores in the United States after 9/11 ran out of translations of the Holy Quran, translation of the meaning of the Holy Quran. People started to read about Islam, to read translation of the meaning of the Quran, to read about, to the extent that they ran most of these bookshops, they ran out of copies. But what happened? This is a very sad effect. The Jews, the Zionists, exploited this situation, and they started to print and reprint books written by Orientalists about Islam, and started to provide these bookstores with. Why? To distort the clear image of Islam. So look how cunning those Jews are, you see. They pay from their money to distort and to give these books. They, seized the chance, and when there were no books about Islam after 9/11 in the United States, they said, here we are, we will print books. But are they books about Islam? No. They are books written by enemies of Islam, some of the Orientalists, I will not overgeneralize, and they started to flood markets, book markets with these books. And the average American person will read distorted pictures about Islam, unfortunately. And this is happening. Clarifying Muslim image, those who really, were the victim of terrorism, you'll be surprised that I tell you that they were the Muslims themselves. In the United States, I cannot overgeneralize, but to a certain extent, they related the story to us. They said, we reached a stage that we couldn't go out, although they have nothing to do with what happened. But as long as their name is Muhammad, Ali, Nasr, Abdul Karim, and so on, they are classified to be terrorists. Just like this, overgeneralization. Some of them even, you'll be surprised and maybe you'll laugh out of sadness when I tell you that even some from the third group, uncommitted, devious Muslims, they even do not practice Islam, but they carry the Muslim name. They were exposed to a lot of harassment, torture, and some of them lost their lives. Islamic centers were attacked. Very bad language that I cannot say in this present, in your presence, were written on the Islamic centers, simply because they just overgeneralized and they had enmity against Islam as a whole. So the Muslims there, they were really in a bad situation. Even our sisters couldn't go out to groceries to buy water or milk and so on. But some noble, non-Muslim American families, and we have to be just, they were not Muslims, but they were kind. They used to go themselves to the groceries, to the markets, buy all what their neighbors Muslim need and bring it. It happened. And Muslims told us after we went, after 9/11, we went to the United States, they said, yes, some of these noble American families, they were so kind, although they were not Muslims. So my advice to you, brothers and sisters, and myself, don't overgeneralize about any faith, any race. There are, like in any religion, there are people who are good and people who are bad. So I'm not overgeneralizing. I'm saying that yes, certain noble families in the United States, they did not practice any harassment, just the opposite. They stood with their neighbors, the Muslim neighbors, and they helped them during this very difficult time that they passed through. Preserving their identity. Those people who are weak, in faith, they tried, as our Khatib today, told us, Brother Ilyas, they tried to hide their Islamic identity in fear of being terrorized or being harassed after 9/11. So they tried, the wise men with them, they tried to keep this and preserve their identity as a Muslim in order, rather than to lose their identity. Encountering extremism, again, we should not deny that certain group, they are extremists, and this is a kind of offense to Islam. It is a misrepresentation of Islam. Islam is the religion of moderation. It's not a religion of extremism, whether permissiveness or extremism in the sense that we try to go away from the middle course, the reality of Islam, which is the al-wasati, moderation. Encouraging dialogue. As a result, they started to have dialogue, and in our visit, with the Muslim world, we had a lot of dialogue with different denominations, different churches. Even we met some of the congressmen. We went to a very well-known journals and journalists and so on. So there was some kind of dialogue as a result of 9/11. Now I come to the report. I come to the report and you will hear it yourself spoken by the person who did it. But I will take certain statistics from this report. This report says that for any nation, in order for a culture to maintain itself for more than 25 years, there must be a fertility rate of 2.11 children per family. What does that mean? The report is saying that for any nation to keep their culture, and you know in culture, the culture includes the language, the faith, the belief, the customs, and so on. So he's saying that for any nation to preserve this culture, their culture, they should have a kind of fertility rate. What do I mean by fertility rate? That's the number of families, newly born babies in the family. This number should be more than 2.11, or at least 2.11 or more. With anything less than 2.11, be careful about this figure, the culture will decline as population shrinks, so does their culture. If the fertility rate is less than 2.11, this nation is in a great threat to lose their identity. Now, let's apply this to various countries. Examples of fertility rate in some European countries. In France, the fertility rate is 1.8. Is it less or more? Less. It is less. It should be 2.11, so it is only 1.8. Go to England, it is even less, 1.6. Greece, 1.3. Go to Germany, 1.3 again. Italy, even less, 1.2. And then Spain, 1.1. What does that mean? It implies that the Western culture is threatened to disappear, according to this report. Let's talk about it in general. This man saying that, however, population of Europe is not declining due to immigration, and in particular, Muslim immigrations. So when he applied it, he noticed that with the great immigration, and not any immigration, it is Muslims immigration to the West, this kind of rate will not decline. Then he talks about France. In southern France, especially in Marseille, Nice, and so on, France, there are more mosques than churches. And you are surprised. How can, in a Christian country like France, there are more mosques than churches? What does it imply? It implies that the Muslims, they started to have their identity, to show themselves, propagate Islam. Otherwise, why they would need a mosque? They need a mosque to worship. This means the number of Muslims are increasing, and I will give more statistics. This report says that by 2027, 1 in 5 Frenchmen will be a Muslim, which is really great. From every 5 Frenchmen, 1 will be a Muslim, which is not far away, in 2027. And not only that, but also in approximately 33 years from now, and it is less, by the way, because this report was done in 2008. So in less than 33 years, France will be an Islamic republic. What does it mean? That if this rate, the fertility rate among Muslim families will continue, and the decrease of the fertility rate within non-Muslim family continue, this will be the result, that the Muslims will be the majority in France. How about England? In last 30 years, the Muslim population in Britain rose from 82,000 to 2.5 million. Imagine this big jump from 82,000 to 2.5 million in England. Over 1,000 mosques, some were churches in England. Some were churches, and they sold the church, and it is turned now into mosque. And I have witnessed personally many churches that were bought and turned to be mosques. Now we talk about a different country. Let's talk about the Netherlands, I think. the Netherlands, that is Holland, 50% of all newborns are Muslims. Imagine 50%, as high as 50% of all newborns are Muslims. Holland TV says, and this is their own voices, they say Islam is the fastest spreading faith among youth in Germany. In approximately 15 years, half of population will be Muslim. We come to Russia now. In Russia, now there are 23 million Muslims. That is 1 out of 5 Russian is a Muslim. Those who gave the veto against our brothers in Syria, they are threatened by the presence of Islam, inshallah, in Russia. And then we'll have a different veto, not a veto that is allowing the slaughtering of men and women and children in Syria. 40% of Russian army will be Muslim in few years. Imagine, 40%. Now we'll talk about Belgium. You'll be surprised by these statistics. 25% of population and 50% of newborns in Belgium are Muslims. Belgium government stated 1/3 of European children will be born to Muslim families by 2025. Germany. When we talk about Germany, we talk about German Federal Statistics Office state. Germany will be a Muslim state by the year 2050. They based it upon certain statistics of family rate again. Now we move a little bit to Canada and the United States. In Canada, the fertility rate in Canada is 1.6, still less than 2.11. Talking about population, between the year 2001 to 2006, Canada's population increased by 1.6 million. But among this 1.6 million, 1.2 million of them are immigrants. And most of these immigrants are from Muslim countries. Now the United States. The fertility rate in the United States is 1.6. In 1970, there were 100,000 Muslims. Today, by the year 2008, because this report, as I told you, it was done in the year 2008, there are over 9 million Muslims in the United States. Maybe now it is more because, the NBC News, they say that 20,000 Americans convert to Islam each year. In 2005, a meeting of 24 Islamic organizations held in Chicago to plan to evangelize, we say to Islamize, not evangelize, American through education, politics, and federation. So this journalist, this non-Muslim journalist, they say that, oh Christian, be careful, because in the year 2005, there was a big meeting in Chicago where we had 24 Muslim societies and associations, and they are trying to evangelize. He used the word evangelize, but we have to put it as he put it, But in reality, he means that they were to Islamize America through education, politics, and journalism. And in 30 years, there will be 50 million Muslims in America. It's not me who's saying it. This report by this evangelist is saying it. Now the Catholic Church, they admit that Muslims' numbers surpassed theirs. Number of Muslims. In 7 years, Islam will be the dominant religion of the world. And this is the conclusion of the report. Now we are talking generally, you see. Generally speaking, that 25 million Muslims in Europe now. The German government states this 2052 will increase to 104 in 40 years. 104 million Muslims in Europe only. The report writes. Now, here's the point that I told you. This man, why did he give the statistics? He gave it to, promote and also to tell the Christian that they should go back to the gospel because Islam is threatening the West. This is what he says, and you will hear him in his own voice. As believers, it doesn't mean Muslims, Christian. As believers, we call upon you to join effort to share the gospel message with a changing world. This is a call to action. With this I conclude, but now to show the authenticity of what I'm saying, I will get you to hear and see these statistics yourself. But what do we say as a Muslim? We say, Muslim advise that read the Quran with no preconcepts to discover the reality of Islam, to discover Islam at its reality, sublime reality of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. So this is, in conclusion, our message as a Muslim. We say to this man and to all others who are trying to propagate things against Islam, we say, read the Holy Quran with no preconcept to discover the sublime reality of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. And now just allow me to announce to you our website and our email, and then I take your leave to watch with me this report as it was produced in itself. For those brothers and sisters, our website is www.islamunveiled.org. I advise you to visit it. Alhamdulillah, although it is an ordinary, humble website, but more than 4,800 people visit us per day? No, per an hour. Every hour more than 4,800 visit us on this humble website. This is our email, Islam_CC. CC is abbreviation for Communities Center at yahoo.com. This concludes my presentation to you, but allow me now to get you to watch this presentation itself. Of course, I take excuse from you that in the beginning there's a little bit of, it is done by non-Muslims, so there's a little bit of music in the beginning. We couldn't edit it, you see.
To maintain itself for more than 25 years, there must be a fertility rate of 2.11 children per family. With anything less, the culture will decline. Historically, no culture has ever reversed a 1.9 fertility rate. A rate of 1.3, impossible to reverse, because it would take 80 to 100 years to correct itself, and there is no economic model that can sustain a culture during that time. In other words, if two sets of parents each have one child, there are half as many children as parents. If those children have one child, then there are 1/4 as many grandchildren as grandparents. If only 1 million babies are born in 2006, it's hard to have 2 million adults enter the workforce in 2026. As the population shrinks, so does the culture. As of 2007, the fertility rate in France was 1.8, England 1.6, Greece 1.3, Germany 1.3, Italy 1.2, Spain 1.1. Across the entire European Union of 31 countries, the fertility is a mere 1.38. Historical research tells us these numbers are impossible to reverse. In a matter of years, Europe as we know it will cease to exist. Yet the population of Europe is not declining. Why? Immigration. Islamic immigration. Of all population growth in Europe since 1990, 90% has been Islamic immigration. France, 1.8 children per family. Muslims, 8.1. In southern France, traditionally one of the most populated church regions in the world, there are now more mosques than churches. 30% of children ages 20 and younger are Islamic. In the larger cities such as Nice, Marseille, and Paris, that number has grown to 45%. By 2027, 1 in 5 Frenchmen will be Muslim. In just 39 years, France will be an Islamic republic. In the last 30 years, the Muslim population of Great Britain rose from 82,000 to 2.5 million, a 30-fold increase. There are over 1,000 mosques, many of them former churches. In the Netherlands, 50% of all newborns are Muslim, and in only 15 years, half of the population of the Netherlands will be Muslim. In Russia, there are over 23 million Muslims. That's 1 out of 5 Russians. 40% of the entire Russian army will be Islamic in just a few short years. Currently in Belgium, 25% of the population and 50% of all newborns are Muslim. The government of Belgium has stated 1/3 of all European children will be born to Muslim families by 2025, just 17 years away. The German government, the first to talk about this publicly, recently released a statement saying, "The fall in the German population can no longer be stopped. Its downward spiral is no longer reversible. It will be a Muslim state by the year 2050. Muammar al-Gaddafi of Libya said, "There are signs that Allah will grant victory to Islam in Europe, without swords, without guns, without conquest. We don't need terrorists. We don't need homicide bombers. The 50+ million Muslims in Europe will turn it into a Muslim continent within a few decades." There are currently 52 million Muslims in Europe. The German government said that number is expected to double in the next 20 years to 104 million. Closer to home, the numbers tell a similar story. Right now, Canada's fertility rate is 1.6, nearly a full point below what is required to sustain a culture. And Islam is now the fastest growing religion. Between 2001 and 2006, Canada's population increased by 1.6 million, 1.2 of those immigration. In the United States, the current fertility rate of American citizens is 1.6. With the influx of the Latino nations, the rate increases to 2.11, the bare minimum required to sustain a culture. In 1970, there were 100,000 Muslims in America. Today, there are over 9 million. The world is changing. It's time to wake up. 3 years ago, a meeting of 24 Islamic organizations was held in Chicago. The transcripts of that meeting showed in detail their plans to evangelize America through journalism, politics, education, and more. They said, "We must prepare ourselves for the reality that in 30 years, there will be 50 million Muslims living in America. The world that we live in is not the world in which our children and grandchildren will live." The Catholic Church recently reported that Islam has just surpassed their membership numbers. Some studies show that at Islam's current rate of growth, in 5 to 7 years, it will be the dominant religion of the world. As believers, we call upon you to join the effort to share the gospel message with the changing world. This is a call to action.
With this, I conclude, brothers and sisters. Now the floor is open for discussion, comment, and I think, Brother Yusuf, we should have distributed the paper for question and answer. Brother Yusuf with us? distribute these papers to the sisters and brothers if they have questions, or if you have questions directly. So now the floor is open for your comments, correction, questioning, or whatever you like. Zakaria, do we have a mobile microphone for the brothers? For the sister, we do have. Fine. Okay, do we have any comments and questions? Because we have to stop 10 minutes before 6 o'clock. We'll stop 10 minutes, inshallah, before 6 o'clock to allow you time for making wudu and something. So, who was the first questioner? If you didn't ask, I will start asking you. So it's better that you start asking. Fair deal, Brother Asim. Yes, it's fair. And you want to brother here,
Muslim in America still facing a problem from the government, or they are living as a...
This is a good question. Even when I was there, you see, there wasn't that, harassment as we hear. You will be surprised when I tell you, when we went there after 9/11, in Baltimore, which is not far away from Washington, there were a big Muslim conference attended by 26,000 Muslim men and women. So, alhamdulillah, it's not that, as we imagine. Now I think it is less, but people from the same country might, give a better question. Brother Asim or Brother Hudayfa, the question is very important. Is the harassment, the thing in the United States, is as bad as before? So now we have Brother Asim who will address this question.
After the advent of 9/11, what happened was the country went through a big transition of trying to really understand who the Muslims were. As the doctor has pointed out, shortly after 9/11, all of the bookstores that had any publications of Quran were sold out. But the enemies of Islam, they still tried to make the Muslims look bad. And even now, when you look at the news, you see they always try to publicize. They have a chart which is called the terrorists. At this point, the rate is up 100. This is all a plot. But, I believe, there are Muslims that are still suffering harassment, traveling harassment, job harassment. So it's still happening. But we have to uplift our da'wah. Inshallah, Allah will change the situation.
Any other question? Any question from our sisters here? Do you have any question from our sisters? If you have, go ahead.
Thank you for your good presentation. But I want to give advice or something in my mind about who visit these foreign countries for going to study or going to why our government, Islamic government, doesn't like this obligation, election for him to be a caller for Islam in this country. It's very, very important if they do like this. For everyone, immigrate or visit or studying there or living there.
You have to give them a presentation. This is very, very important comment from our doctors, Allah khair. that a Muslim person going to immigrate or to work or to study should be aware of these things so he would know the reality rather than just to go without knowing this background. It is so important, and I wish that there will be kind of arrangement, a course, that will be given to those people before they go.
Excuse me, because I was in Russia 5 years. I was studying my PhD there, and I cannot speak Russian very well, and I haven't the ability to call them for Islam, because I haven't the permission from my government, and also I'm fear about the security in this foreign country to speaking about religion. So it's very difficult. But most of them are admire or very want to know many things Islam. Many questions about Islam. They have the ability to enter Islam, but they are fear.
Well, what you said is really important, because as you have heard, brother, our dear speaker saying that in a certain country before, I wouldn't say now, but before, it was really difficult to speak about any religion, not only Islam, any religion in communist countries like Russia. But the good news that I carry to you, that about 5 years ago, through the Muslim World League, we started a 10 days course in Moscow itself about Islam. Then we moved to Kazan in Tatarstan, and again we saw and we were received by the Russian Islamic University. They call it like this. And we stayed there and we gave a lecture about Islam for 10 days. So alhamdulillah, with the decline of communism, the situation now is better than before. But at that your time, maybe it is really difficult to talk about any religion. Even nowadays in China, during the Olympiads, the Olympic Games, the American government, they sent a lot of Bibles, and these Bibles were confiscated at the airport, at the Chinese airport, and they were sent back to the United States. So there are still traces of communism, which does not believe in any religion. But again, with this kind of strictness, there are still, alhamdulillah, certain good hopes. Witness what I told you, that the Muslim World League managed to start a course in Moscow itself and in other cities in Russia. Dr. Sayyid.
Thank you very much for this encouraging lecture. I think you have given this fertility rate of different countries, but there should have been a comparison with Muslim countries also, so that we could know where from that deficiency in fertility in those countries will be fulfilled. Number one. Number two, I have a comment about this decreased fertility rate. There may be many factors for this decreased fertility rate in the countries you have shown us, like family planning or free sex in those countries, so they may not feel desire for marriage, broken family structures where they are not able to cope up with the family affairs, so being afraid of that they may not marry or like that, or maybe climatic conditions. So I think these may be the responsible factors for decreased fertility rate in those countries, and these factors itself speak of very poor, that what you call quality of life, or very degraded type of life in those countries as compared to Muslim culture. But we should have fertility rate for comparison in Muslim countries.
Yes, I agree with you. The presentation would have been more comprehensive if there were again rates of other countries, and also to have a question. mentioned the microphone is not working, so I'll pass the mic to Shadari. Let's continue commenting upon Dr. Said, a very important comment. Yes, the factors that he mentioned, it plays an important role in this low fertility rate. I agree with you completely. Add to it, you see, political factors. For example, in China, now it is a must that any family couldn't have more than 2 children, you see? Otherwise they are exposed. And what happens? You find a lot of children in a newly born, they are thrown away. Otherwise there will be a lot of taxes or even punishment. So a Chinese government, they made it a must that any family shouldn't have more than 2 members. Now, before I read out this question, sisters have questions, and I pass this microphone to them. Yes, go ahead, sister. Alaikum salam.
It's a very pleasure to be here, especially when this person at the beginning with the outreach and the beautiful administration. May Allah help you always, answer us for always supporting you.
Amen.
First point that is European countries for this polarized country. Let's hear about the vocational growth in one side and one side. Let's hear about the Islamic growth. But so this is the position in their heart that they are trying to avoid scholars studies Muslims image all around the world, including India, as well as by the so-called a lot of trials campaign between the different opinions. But according to my experience, they are using a very beautiful trick that they will try to learn our own cultures and traditions to receive us in a better way. Then they try to inject their poison on us. So that for all the Muslims, even not only here, all the Muslims all around the world, to be careful when you deal with these people that they are aiming to shut down the door of Muslims.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much, sister. Yes, I agree with her that a Muslim shouldn't be only cautious, over-cautious about certain ways and methods that they try to spread their ideas and beliefs, you know. Either it could be through various ways, through medicine, through education, through curriculum, through the mass media, and so on. So a Muslim, average Muslim, should be alert, you know, from such ways. I remember when I went to a Western country, still I have not entered the country yet, I'm still at the airport. A lady came to me and she gave me a book about Hinduism. And to be honest with you, it was Boston Airport. My first step in the United States. I had an image that it is a secular society, they don't care much about the religion, but I was mistaken. Before even entering the country, the city, I was still at Boston Airport. A lady came and gave me a book about this big, calling me to Hinduism. So I agree with Sister Muna. Yes, one should be cautious and over-cautious, you know, to protect his or her faith by knowing about Islam. And that's why we have this course, you know, to enlighten each other about ways and strategies, and also to widen our knowledge about our great religion, and also to know about certain wise way to invite people to save them from hellfire. So thank you for your comment. I think we should stop within 2 minutes. I have a question here. It is a very important question. The questioner said, what is the first thing we do or talk to call people to Islam, especially Christians? This is an important question, and it is, you know, within the essence of this course. We should benefit from a brother who is more experienced than me, Brother Hudayfa here, Jazallah Khair, because he's a man of experience. But I humbly say, before we listen to Brother Hudayfa about addressing this question, how do we invite people to Islam, especially Christians, I will say that there isn't one way, because it depends on the person. Is he educated? So you approach him, from the scientific way. And by the way, we have Dr. Amir Al-Alma, he'll be speaking to you in one of these sessions about how to use miracles in the Quran and Sunnah to invite others to Islam. In order not to take your time, I'd rather listen to Brother Hudayfa to comment on this question, that is, what is the best way to call Christian to Islam? Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah. I found, especially here, in living here in the kingdom, I found the best way, and this way can also work in America or in the West. You ask them, what do they know about Islam? Right? Because that's the best way. As far as Americans and I found Americans and British people, they don't like talking about religion, but they like to talk about culture. They love and they want to know about your culture. So if you talk to them about culture, but we know, right, that we cannot separate the Saudi culture, the Arab culture from Islam. It's not separate. It's together like coffee and milk. Once you mix it, it's together. So if you were to start a conversation, do it in a way that you're talking about culture. Or then you just ask them, if they're not, they want to know about religion, you can say, well, what do you know about Islam? Well, I know that you worship Muhammad, and that you have a God named Allah, and you Muslim men, you can have up to 10 wives, and you can divorce your wife by just looking at her and telling her to go home. And wow, or you pray, I think you pray 7 times a day, but there's a discount, so you only got to pray 5. They come up with all sorts of strange things, and just from that, you can start. Right? You can start. Well, exactly, no. And remember, because Allah says that when you call people to the deen, right, you have to use wisdom. So don't start off with no debate. Don't go into a debate. Excuse me, what do you know about Islam? What do you know about Saudi culture? And then, for example, you have people who are probably here in this hospital, they hear the adhan 5 times a day. And what I usually do, when I'm giving small talks, I'll say, okay, what is it, this noise you hear on the loudspeaker? Oh, they say it's the call to prayer. They know that because the store is closed at the call to prayer. So they know that this is a call to prayer, so they know the store is closed. But then you ask them, what are they saying? What is the adhan saying? Allahu Akbar. What does that mean? What are the words? What does it mean? You can hear all sorts of interesting things they say. And then you start with from there. Okay, we say Allah, Allahu Akbar, God is the greatest. And when we use the word Allah, it's the word for God in Arabic. So I'm saying this is the way. This is the way that I've learned to give da'wah, by asking them questions and by talking about the culture.
Yes. You have a question from the lady section. It will be the last question because we want to give chance for the brothers and sisters to prepare for Maghrib. Go ahead, sister. Cannot hear. Use the microphone. Yes, what's the question?
There are some students who go abroad to study law. Their attitudes toward Islam are new. How should we advise them?
Yes, it's a very important question, Brother Hudayfa. It's a very important question. We want to benefit you because you will be going back to Riyadh. So I am here available with them throughout the course. But as for you, you are precious.
present. So please.
Like the brother said, there should be an orientation. Going to the West, it seems like from here, you know, when you're going to the West, it's like, oh, we're going to go, you know, we're going to America, we're going to have freedom. You know, we're going to have freedom. And you ask them, what freedom are you going to have when you go to America? Is not Allah there in America? Does not Allah see what you do in America? You know? But it's like, oh, you know, we're going to go to America, I'm going to have freedom. That's an interesting word, freedom. Freedom is one word, but has many meanings for different people. So, what are you saying when you know when you go to the West? What are you saying? What do you want to do? Maybe the laws of Allah have been relaxed. That's the freedom. But is that really freedom? And so yes, actually, as of 2 years ago, I don't know what the number is now, but 2 years ago, you have 91,000 Saudi students in America. That was 2 years ago. So now the number should be, it's only America. That's only America. I'm not talking about Australia or Canada or England. Only in America, 91,000. So I think that the students, before they go, they should have an orientation. And because a lot of students, you know, they say, okay, I just want to go to school. I don't want to give no dawah. I don't want to talk about religion, because they say, okay, my English is not good. I don't really know that, you know, basically I really don't know that much about Islam. But if you were able to do an orientation and screen the students before they go, actually, how many students have we lost by sending them to America at 17, 18 years old? It's like a baby in a candy store.
Sorry, brothers and sisters, we have to stop because Maghrib is not far away. Please allow our sisters first to go, and then you know, our brothers. So please, brothers, remain behind. The sisters will go to the cafeteria, and then inshallah you follow. So can I ask our sisters to go and enjoy a cup of tea and some desserts in the cafeteria in the ladies section? While the brothers are waiting, I think we'll entertain Dr. Dawood. You had something, so you had a question. Go ahead, please.
There is no time, I can do it in the second session also. Assalamu alaikum. Just wanted to say two comments. When we heard the report, we had a sense of optimism. That is, okay, things go good. But if we see the language of the report, when it said, it's time to awake, and also when it said, we like calling people for action. So if we depend on, okay, this percentage or percentages, I would like to draw my attention and yours, that is, we should work harder, and we should not depend on such things. And it's the responsibility upon our shoulders to work harder and faster also. Otherwise, we'll be back. That is, we'll be behind them, and they will give them the chance to go ahead. That is the first one. The second one, second comment is, I do agree with my colleagues, brothers and sisters who said about the ways and methods for calling others, and this session is enhancing such things. But it is true that it is the first step, that is, we should know the background of the person who we are going to call. And as Dr. Abdulah Abu Eshy said about his education, about whether he was born as a Muslim or he's revert and so on. But there are, by Dr. Zakir Naik, there are 10 likely questions to each, almost to each people from each religion, like the 10 likely questions asked by Hindus, the 10 likely questions asked by Christians, the 10 likely questions asked by even some Muslims who don't have proper knowledge of Islam. So if we
So
go
Dawood, it's important information. How can we get access to this?
they are in their website, I think Islamic Research Foundation, IslamicResearchFoundation.org or something. Okay, they are in their website.
I wish we could announce it. You give it to Brother Asim. He'll be the next speaker. Brother Asim will announce it to the brothers and sisters because it's very important.
Yeah, and there are some model answers to these questions by Dr. Zakir, and maybe there are some plus questions also. Even when you go to Islam house, they have live chat. If you start chatting with them, the first question they ask you, whether you were born as a Muslim or you were converted. Then they can deal with your conversation. So there are some strategies, so we can acquire certain things.
With this we conclude, brother. Now please proceed to the cafeteria to enjoy a cup of tea or some dessert, and then we pray Maghrib and come back to listen to our brother Sheikh Asim. May Allah reward.
سيوزع عليكم محاور المحاضرة التي ألقيت. أحرص أنكم تحصلوا عليها لأن فيها إحصائيات مهمة. To give this presentation because within an hour or hour and a quarter or hour and a half he will be off to Jeddah, and inshallah he will come back to us safe and sound.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, what I'd like to do is, because Isha is coming very quickly, I'd like to give my talk, and then inshallah I'd like to leave maybe 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes for questioning. Inshallah. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina. Amma ba'd. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, A'udhu billahi min shaitanir rajeem, wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, verily, throughout time, Allah is swearing by time, all man is in a state of loss, except those who exalt Dawah, exalt one another to righteousness, and exalt one another to truth and patience. Alhamdulillah, this very small surah, as most of the ulama have said, clarifies in whole what is the scope of the believers in their position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before I start my lecture, I would like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Asim Mohamed. I'm a native-born American. Alhamdulillah, by the grace and rahmah and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I accepted Islam in 1977. I was one of those 100,000 that the doctor showed on the feed. I was one of those people. 1977, I became the Muslim. Alhamdulillah. I didn't know Huzaifa was in 1979, so Huzaifa and I are running neck and neck. I cannot express the thanks enough for Allah giving me hidayat. Sometimes, wallahi, sometimes I'm sitting by myself and I look around me and I say, SubhanAllah, you're Muslim. And without any shame, tears start running down my eyes. Because I'm Muslim. This is a very special gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, I used to do a lot of traveling, and you know, they used to say to me, brother, you're Muslim by choice, and we're Muslim by birth. Alhamdulillah. I said, Allah give me hidayah. Allah gives hidayah to whomever He wants. Yahdi liman yasha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks very highly of us in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ جَاعِلُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. He speaks so high that He puts us above the malaika. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us above the malaika. If we look at the malaika and we see what is their position with Allah, they never disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Malaika never disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said there's some malaika, they've been in sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever since the creation of them. There are some malaika, they're in ruku. There are some malaika, they take the sun up and they bring the sun down. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of us, He puts us above them. He says, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ جَاعِلُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. I said to the malaika, I was going to put in the earth a khalifa. And this khalifa is only here for a very short period of time. Allah says in the Quran, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. He says to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ مَيِّتٌ. Every soul must taste death. Tell them, O Muhammad, you will die and they will die. So we're only here for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the average age expectancy of this ummah is between the ages of 60 and 70. If a person lives to be more than 100 years old, there's a book which I believe everyone knows. It's called the Guinness Books of Records. So if a person lives to be 120, immediately he goes into this book as a spectacular event. Here's a man, he lived 120 years old. But if we look at the people in the cover, there's been people in the cover since 1800. There's been people in the cover since since the beginning of time. During the time of Nuh alayhi salam, 950 years ago, maybe 1,000 now. There's been people in the cover. You see? But their life in the cover is longer than our life here in this life. A very short life. 120 years old, 120, wow. You see, the newspapers, they come and watch you. Well, this person, how do you feel? You see, can you get up? Can you eat properly? This is a spectacular thing. So brothers, this Khalifa that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us will be for a very short period of time. This is why Hidayat is very important. This is why Hidayat is so important. Because a person who dies without Hidayat, he is truly miskeen. A person that goes into the grave and he doesn't understand who Allah is, and he doesn't understand who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is. What are the three things we're going to be asked? Ma Rabbuka. Who is your Lord? Who is your prophet? What is your religion? If we are not able to answer those questions properly, my dear respected brothers, we will be, and sisters, we will be truly be miskeen. We will be poor. And we won't be poor for a short period of time. Al-akhirah da'iman abada, forever and ever and ever. So, my dear respected brothers, this life very short. There's one authenticated hadith related by Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. He said one day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he placed his hands on my shoulders, and he said, be in this world as if you are a stranger. كن في الدنيا كأنك قريب وآبر سبيل. Be in this world as if you are a stranger. Thereafter, Ibn Umar said, after I heard this, after I heard these words from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, I used to say, take for your health, for your sickness, and take from your life, for your death. So, my dear respected brothers, now I will tell you about my journey into Islam. Alhamdulillah. I accepted Islam in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s. In the 70s in America was a very, let me say, the 70s and the 80s in America, a lot of radical and racial things were going on. You see, you had racism at its peak. You see, I believe in the 50s, shortly after I was born, there existed a law in America called the Jim Crow law. What was the Jim Crow law? The Jim Crow law was a law where if you were a person of color and you went from the northern part of the United States down to the southern part of the United States, they had a line which was an imaginary line they used to call the Mason-Dixon line. If you passed the Mason-Dixon line and you were a person of color, if you wasn't considered a pure white Caucasian person, then you were subjected to what is called the Jim Crow law. What is the Jim Crow law? They call it separate but not equal. That means that, okay, you had a bathroom that said, excuse me, sir, please. You had a bathroom which was called white only. Then you had a bathroom over here that said black only. If you went to the haditha, to the park, you had a fountain. You know how you drink water outside? You had a fountain that said white only. Then you had a fountain that said black only. And then you'd see the white man come and he'd have his dog drink out of the same fountain that said black only. This was going on in the 60s and the 70s. This is when I accepted Islam. I was a young man, okay, and I was searching. Okay, racism was all over. I remember when I was a young kid, my mother used to tell me, I will never let you go down south. I was a young boy. She said, I will never let you go down south. She said, why? Because I don't want them to kill you. You're my only son. And I couldn't see it because I was living in the north. I was living in a place called Bloomington, New Jersey, which was North America. And all of my neighbors were white. And I was, we were all getting along. So racism wasn't really there. But racism was really in the United States of America. I believe in the 60s, you had a lot of what they call race riots. Cities would be burning. National Guards would be coming through the cities, trying to break up these race riots. These were the 60s. This brother Huzaifa can testify. All these things were happening in America. You see, I believe right in America, I was in 5th grade. We had 4 major assassinations. 4 major political people were assassinated. 1963, I remember I was in 5th grade. John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States, was assassinated. I remember clearly, I was in 5th grade, we were sitting in the classroom, and all of a sudden, all the teachers are walking around, tears running down their eyes. And we're young kids, we're trying to figure out what's going on. They said the President of the United States was just killed. I said, subhanAllah. So we all had to go home. Then directly after that, one great man who later became a Muslim, he made Hajj, Malcolm X, called El-Hajj Malik Shabazz. You see, he was a part of an organization which called themselves Islam. They called the Nation of Islam. But he really was, they weren't really practicing Islam. He became a part of that. But then when he started searching, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him hidayah. He went to Egypt. And after Egypt, he came back to America. Then he went to Hajj. And when he went to Hajj, that really shot him out. He said, wow, I see so many different color Muslims here. White Muslims, yellow Muslims, brown Muslims, Muslims from all different worlds. He became a Muslim. He came back to America, and because of his separation from that group, someone assassinated him and killed him. Okay. Because of the racial conflict in America, you had Martin Luther King Jr. In 1968, they assassinated him. So all of these things were going on around me as I was a young boy. I was wondering what was going on. Who was right? You see? Then shortly after Martin Luther King was assassinated, you had the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, the brother of John F. Kennedy. And he was the district attorney of New York, I believe. And that shook the entire nation from the 60s, bringing it into the 70s. You see, no nationality or no culture felt comfortable. Everyone was searching for truth. We didn't know, you know. So what I did, alhamdulillah, I had a friend of mine whose mother was a Muslim. And her husband was practicing Islam. So I used to look at him and I used to say, alhamdulillah, these people, they have such good character. You see? And they were always talking about Allah. And they were always talking about the Quran. Myself, as a young boy, my mother was making me go to the church. And I used to hate to go to church. I used to hate it. I used to sit in the church, and if I didn't go to church, Huzaifa will tell you, your mother would punish you. She'd take a stick, boy, you gotta get up. So every Sunday, I used to hate Sunday. Go to church. And what did you see when you go to church? You seen a picture of Jesus, hanging off the cross, and they would tell you, this is God. This is God. And you say, how can God be hanging off of a cross? If he's God, he has more power than that. But this is how they believe. And in America, astaghfirullah, most people, you see, who are Christian, they are Christian through inheritance. That means that their father was a Christian, their grandfather was a Christian, their great-grandfather was a Christian. So they grandfather into the religion. So if you ask them, what is this religion that you have, they can never tell you what Christianity is. They have no book knowledge of Christianity. So I was searching. I was truly searching for Islam. So I went out and I bought 2 books. One was The Focus of Islam and The Teachings of Islam. Okay. After reading these books and seeing this family who was Muslim, I started calling myself Muslim. I hadn't even taken Shahada, but I felt that I had made a change in my life. I'm Muslim. People come up to me, my peers, and say, who are you? I say, I'm Muslim, brother. I don't do that. I would watch my character. I'd make sure what I eat. The most important thing was I told my mother and I told everyone, I don't eat khanzir. I don't eat pork. And I went home and I told my mother, I said, all of the pots that you cook out of that have pork in it, because you know, the average black family in America, they grew up on pork. If you study the history of African Americans, this is all they had to eat, because this was the cheapest food in the South. So when they were slaves, they came over from the slave trade, they had to eat pork. They used to eat the pork. So as, you know, and this is why, we have a few doctors here, they could even testify that this is one of the reasons why high blood pressure, you know, is high amongst the African American people from the pork. But anyway, I told my mother, I said, look, I'm Muslim. I don't eat pork. And if you want me to eat from your plate or your dishes, you must wash every plate. And she was happy. She did it. So, you know, my life, and I hadn't taken Shahada, had taken a change. And years went by, maybe 1, 2, 3 years, and I was calling myself a Muslim, but I hadn't taken Shahada. So I moved away from my mother's house, and I started working at a job, and I broke my finger. On the job, I broke my finger. I was working for Yahud. So he said, okay, you go to the hospital. Okay? So on the way to the hospital, I rode past this huge building, and I seen in the building, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. I didn't know what these words were, but something kept calling in my heart, when you finish fixing your finger, go alatul, go directly to this place. Something kept saying, go there. So I went to the hospital, they bandaged up my finger. On the way back, I went directly to this place. As I was walking up the stairs, I'll never forget, man. I said, wow, this is weird. I had never been in a place like this before. I'm walking up the stairs, then all of a sudden I see this big place, which I now know was the Musalla. Big Musalla. Then I looked around, and I seen there was about 5 or 6 brothers. They had their turbans on, they had their long beards. I said, mashallah, where am I? you know, this, I said, where am I? They came over to me, they said, Assalamu alaikum. I said, wa alaikum salam. Are you Muslim? I said, yes. They said, have you taken your Shahada? I said, Shahada? What is Shahada? I didn't know what Shahada was. They said, have you said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad? I said, no. But I'm Muslim. They said, brother, come, fuck me. So they brought me onto the floor. And alhamdulillah, they explained to me the greatness of Allah, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And I remember this day like it was yesterday. You know, I was searching for the truth, and then here these people are telling me about the greatness of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam without mother and father. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Maryam Isa without the agency of a man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He split the Red Sea with Musa alayhi salam. Then they started telling me about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi salam, that he is the final prophet. And I was searching. I said, subhanallah, ana musta'in, I'm ready. Immediately I said, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Shortly after that, these brothers, who I know, they were involved in Da'wah. Their life was Da'wah. So they told me, they said, brother, you want to be a Muslim? You have to give Da'wah. You see, this is the final ummah, the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You see, Allah mentions us in the Quran, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر O ye Muslims, you are the best of mankind, raised up for the benefit of mankind, that you should enjoin that which is good, forbid that which is evil. They started giving me all these ayahs of Quran. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Oh, whose words are better than those people who call people to Allah? And this, I said, mashallah. So I started going out with them, dawah. I spent so much time in the masjid. You see, I would get off of work, and I would always be the first person for Fajr, and I would be the last person to leave the masjid. I mean, this was a new life, you see. But what happened was I started having a real concern for my mother and my father. You see, when you hear about the shortness of this life, and when you hear about the punishment in the grave, and when you hear about the punishment in the hereafter, you start thinking about your family. You see, and when you think about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept the belief that Jesus is the Son of God, when you hear that, your heart starts worrying. And you're going around, you're giving people dawah, you see, and all the time you're thinking, oh Allah, please give my mother, give my father, give them hidayah. They're non-Muslim. You're worried about them. So this was 1977, I accepted Islam. In 1983, I was invited to go make Hajj. Before I went to make Hajj, I was born with the name Ulysses Foster. This was my born name. And I did research that Ulysses was a Greek god, you see, Roman god. So I said to myself, Alhamdulillah, if I'm going to visit the holy city of Mecca, I cannot go into Mecca with a name like this. I know, they say, who are you? Ulysses Foster. No. So what I did was, I remember I was working in, I was living in New Jersey, but I was working in Connecticut. So some friend of mine came to me and said, if you give the people in Connecticut an address, that you can change your name for free. I said, really? So he said, they'll change your name, and then what they'll do is they'll put your name in the paper for 1 month to find out if there's any creditors you owe anyone, they can contact you, because now you're changing your whole name. So I went to the book of names. I always had a book of names. And I choose the name Asim. Why I choose the name Asim? Because the name means one who protects. And I said, I want to protect Islam. You know, I'm a Muslim. I want to be one of those who Allah sees as a protector of Islam. So I changed my name to Asim Abdulah Muhammad. So, 1983, I'd never forget, Rabitala al-Islami, an organization from Muslim World League, they invited all the Americans to go to Mecca and make Hajj. And I was chosen. And I will never forget my plane ride as the plane is circling Jeddah. I said, SubhanAllah. This is where it began. You see, when you come into Saudi as an American, and believe me, brothers and sisters that are born in Saudi, you don't know how much an American Muslim loves Saudi Arabia. Because this is where it all began. So as I remember, when I was circling, I started thinking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I started thinking about Bilal, how they used to make Bilal lay on the sand, and they used to drag him through the streets. He's saying, Ahad, Ahad, Allah has won, Allah has won. All these things started coming into my mind. I started thinking about the time when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, there's a hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I remember a time when the only food that we had was what Bilal could conceal under his armpit. I started thinking about Rasulullah. Then tears started coming down my eyes. I started thinking about Dar-Arkam, the house where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to go and secretly have ta'aleem. You see, this is what's like, it immediately, it breaks your heart. So we landed in Jeddah. And as we landed in Jeddah, I said to myself, well, how can I go to someone's house if I'm not invited? I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inviting me to his house. So I said, this authenticated me more and feeling like a Muslim. So when I said, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, I didn't say Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. I said, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Labbaik la sharika la labbaik. Then, as we were going into Mecca, I remember I said to myself, what is going to be the first dua you make when you see the Kaaba? You see, I was taught that when you go into Mecca, you keep your eyes down. You have your ihram over both shoulders. When you walk into Mecca, into the Kaaba, in the Haram, you move your right shoulder, you let your right shoulder be shown, and then when you see the Kaaba, the first dua that you make is dua mustajaba. So there was only one concern, and that was that, oh Allah, you give hidayah to my mother and my father. They were not Muslim. So immediately, when I seen the Kaaba, I made this dua, Ya Hamrain, oh Allah, if there's any sacrifice that I've ever made that you accepted through this sacrifice, oh Allah, give hidayah to my mother and my father. So I traveled for Dawah. I went here for Dawah. I went there for Dawah. I went there for Dawah. 5 years later, I was living in New York, and my mother was living in New Jersey. My sister, she called me, and she told me that my mother had been diagnosed to live only 3 more days. And I felt my time was running out. I said, my time is running out. If she doesn't accept Allah, she's doomed forever. If she doesn't accept Islam, she will go to Jahannam forever. So immediately, I jumped in the car and I drove to the hospital where she was. And there were people in the room. So when I walked into the hospital room, on the way to the hospital, I started thinking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wanted so much for Abu Talib to accept Islam. So much so that he got down on his knees and cried, oh please, accept Allah. I said, I have to do the same thing. So what I did was, I asked everyone, please leave. Then I made 2 rakats. 2 rakats. You can't do anything in life, my dear respected brothers, without Allah. If we think we can do anything without Allah, we're fooling ourselves. So I got down on I made 2 rakats. I made dua for about 5 minutes. Then I went over to her bedside. She couldn't talk. She had all these holes in her mouth. And my reflection was, when I first became Muslim, how she used to feel. I seen a sign of relief on her face. That she was happy. My son has made it. But she didn't want to accept Islam. But she was happy. This new life that he's doing, she felt good about it. So I said to her, I said, you are about to leave this life now. If you leave this life, believing that Jesus is God, okay, Allah will not accept it. Allah will not accept it. Please accept Islam. I started talking about the greatness of Allah. Within 5 minutes, she said, I said, Ma, do you believe what I believe? She said, I said, SubhanAllah. She accepted Islam. Immediately what I did was I ran directly to the masjid. She died a day later. I ran directly to the masjid and I got the brothers there and they washed her body and they did the janazah right there in the hospital for my mother. Alhamdulillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He accepts the dua of the person who feels that Allah is going to accept. This is the prerequisite of dua. What is the prerequisite of dua? Is that we recite the name of Rasulullah. First we praise Allah. We recite the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then we make the dua. Then we have yaqeen that Allah is going to accept our dua. Now, my father was another case. My father's acceptance to Islam was different than my mother. I didn't think that he was going to believe in Allah. Believe me, he was hard. You know, I had brothers come to my house, you see, and give him dawah. And every time they'd give him dawah, he would say, Lakum dinukum waliyadin. Your religion is yours, mine is mine. So I didn't press him. I backed away from him. One day, one brother who was studying in the Jamia Islam here in Medina, he came back to America, so we had a big dinner for him in my house. Okay? So we there for 1 hour. And us American brothers, we like to talk about deen, dawah, hadith. So we talked for 1 hour. He's listening to all this dawah, 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 dawah. And we know, what does Allah say about this gathering of dawah? The gathering of dawah is a gathering of malaika, sakina. You see, Allah mentioned, you know, we're talking about Allah and Allah mentioning us in a higher gathering. So, it comes time for Maghrib, and I asked one brother to call the adhan, because in America, it's not like here. You got masjid here, you got masjid there, but in America, one masjid may be 25 minutes away. Now it's starting to increase, but in some areas, masjids are separated. So, they call the adhan, and my mind starts saying, okay, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when the adhan is called, shaitan runs. Shaitan runs. So I said, okay. When shaitan runs, after he calls the adhan, give my father dawah. Shaitan is running. I said, give him dawah. Okay. As soon as he finishes the adhan, I says, talk to my father about Islam. Now, mind you, lakum dinikum waliyadin, all the time. Now, he's in the Mubarak gathering. As soon as the adhan is called, the brother gives him dawah, not even 5 minutes. He says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I also, we washed his body 4 years later. So my dear respected brothers, I can go on and on and on. It's going to be Isha. I'd like to entertain whatever questions that anyone has regarding my, Islam in America. I just left America in August. I left America in August. I came here, made Umrah, and I've been out of U.S. maybe 6 months. So I was there in 9/11. I remember when it happened. I know about all the brothers that are being harassed because of their names. I'm one of them. So if there be any questions that you have, inshallah, please, I'm ready to do it.
Jazakallah khair. Now the floor is open for any question, any comments. I'll pass this microphone to our sisters.
Do we have another microphone?
I'm going to, questions are going to go back and forth between me and Huzaifa.
Brother Asim, thank you very much for your good, very enriching history. I want to ask you a question. Do you, in America, do you believe what's happening in 11/9, is it true or just they make it for the Jewish?
You have to rephrase that question, because you asked me, do I believe that it was true? Yes, it did happen.
But
I need to know exactly what exactly you mean. Okay, you're trying to say, do I believe that the Muslims had anything to do with it? I know. It's clear, our religion states. We have to look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He never killed any innocent people. This was not the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how can anyone say that a Muslim had anything to do? I mean, he may call himself a Muslim, but his life is not Islam. But we, as a group of Muslims, we don't believe that Islam had anything to do with it. We believe that it was a conspiracy to make Islam look bad. And alhamdulillah, as Dr. Eshy has said, it backfired. Because shortly after that, so many people are accepting Islam. You see, so many people are thirsty for Islam, especially throughout the world. Yes. Go ahead. Please, brothers, ask questions. This is very important. Okay, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khairan. From your story, we really appreciate the guidance that Allah has given to us. But what's the most thing that attracts you a lot to be a Muslim?
When I became a Muslim, and we used to read a lot of stories about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Hayat al-Sahaba. Hayat al-Sahaba really affected my heart, and the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was as a prophet. This affected me more than anything. I stopped looking at the Muslims I've seen around me. Some were practicing Islam, some were not practicing Islam. And I tried to focus my life on the lives of Sahabas and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what really impressed me. What is your comment on Hamza Khashoggi or another saying that? I'm not following this. We know that in Europe there's a big onslaught against Islam. And it's like anything else. Everyone is trying to make the life of Islam look bad. The character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam look bad. His marriage. So my comment is that, they plan and Allah plans, and Allah is the best of plans. I mean, our religion is haq. We don't have to worry about people doing anything. You see, they did this during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You see, all we have to do is hold on to the Salat al-Mustaqim. You see, Allah will protect the religion. What is our job is to keep Iman in our life. Allah will protect His religion. What about the question? Here's a question. doing dawah, and how can you solve it or be? Excuse me, brother. Brother, I'm a very open person because I believe I'm very open because of the experience I've had growing up in the 60s and the 70s dealing with racism. So it doesn't bother me no more. I know that, like Uzaifa said earlier, that we have to try to give dawah with hikmah, with wisdom. So when I give dawah, I try to analyze a situation and address it accordingly. I don't really have any problems with giving dawah.
We still have a question from the lady section, or will we conclude?
You have given a picture of racism 40 years ago. At the moment, how is the discrimination and racism?
We have an American president, don't you know that? Obama. Okay, so that should answer that. But it's not bad. America is going to, alhamdulillah, those statistics that we see from Dr.Abdulah Abu Eshy, I was really happy to see that, they're projecting that Islam will become strong in America. But it's not racism has a free day.
With this, we conclude because the brother Asim still has to travel to Jeddah tonight. So please, we'll get our sisters to leave first and then the brothers. With this, we conclude and we'll see you inshallah next Friday. So our sisters will leave first. Well,
my house is a church. You guys can stay in the house for the whole week. So, Dawah, again, but I just want to check in that it's important for every Muslim to set a good example. You have to set a good example. That's the way that the people came. Because they called him Al-Amin. They called him Al-Amin before he received his hidayah. They called him Al-Amin. And the people became Muslim because of his honesty. Yeah? Because of his honesty. And the strangest thing, right? The same time, in the daytime, the man was calling Muhammad alayhi salam, Muhammad, you're crazy, you're a liar, this and this and this. But at night, the same man will knock on the door. Yeah, Muhammad, I have this gold. I want you to keep it from me. Yeah? And subhanAllah, it wasn't until I came here to Saudi Arabia that I was able to really understand, get a good understanding of the Prophet. And when I came here, I knew that truly the Prophet Muhammad is truly the Prophet of Allah. Remember the night that he left to go to Medina? Yeah? He left Ali with his dead. Why did he leave Ali behind? He had a man, right? He had a man, right? So he left Ali behind to get back to the people. From that I know that he was a prophet. Because if it was me, I would have took that money with me. These people waiting outside to kill me. I would have took that money with me. Find people's weakness. The money belongs to me now. But no. Rasulullah he returned them the amana. And he showed so much kindness. And yeah, Ikhwan, nowadays when kindness comes to go, but nowadays, where's our kindness? Where's our love? Look at the way we drive our cars. Look at the way we're in the masjid of Ramadan, doing Tawabah prayer. And the brother, mashallah, he's crying. Oh. And then as soon as the dua is finished, the brother is pushing his way out the door. You know, where is our kindness? Where is our love? Man? We bring helpers to come help us in our house. And we don't pay them? And yet we want them to become Muslim. We have to set an example. We have to set an example. And you, my brothers, you are in a very embarrassing situation. Why I'm saying that? Because as Brother Asim said, this is where it all started, right here. And I tell my students all the time, I tell it to my students. I'm not talking about Abdulah. I'm talking about the Sahabas. Right? Because all of you can, when I go to your home, you show me this beautiful tree, the family tree. And you can show me this from this Kabila and this, and you can go all the way back to some great Sahaba, go back to Adam. You can do that. I ask you how to put your name. Oh, Muhammad, Ahmed, this, and this, and this, and this. You can go back 12, you know. SubhanAllah. I'm talking about your grandfather, the one who spread Islam. SubhanAllah. I'll stop now. Yes. But the thing is, we need to set an example.